Hi everyone, this is OCD Live. I'm Ali Raymond, and today I wanted to talk to you about what other people can do to help you in your recovery. This is a topic that I go over with my clients pretty much all the time, almost every time, because every client they have a family, they have parents, husbands, wives, and everybody kind of wants to help, but a lot of the times the stuff that they do can actually hurt the recovery process. And I just wanted to go over that with you today because some of it, if you listen to my shows a lot, you probably already know this, but to those people who are listening for the first time, they might not be aware of some of these things. So with this, the responsibility, first of all, the responsibility. Who is responsible for your recovery? Obviously, you are. Um, but when you have a moment of weakness and when you are asking people for reassurance, it's very important for them not to give you reassurance. Because the more they reassure you that everything is okay, the worse you will feel overall. Because it will never feel like you have enough reassurance that you are okay. Even if it feels like that for a second, something new is going to come up and it's going to affect you just the same. So you have to make sure that you yourself, you're not asking for reassurance, and they have the responsibility of not give reassurance when you do have a weak moment and ask. Because those are two different things, right? So also, there's other ways to ask for reassurance than just directly asking. For example, if they help you to avoid something. So, for example, I don't want to touch this dirty whatever. Can you touch it for me instead? Because I'm afraid if I touch it, then I'll get something and things like that, right? They do it for you. So that in that situation, they almost become a crutch. And this is especially prevalent in parent-child relationships where the child will basically throw a tantrum and say, no, I absolutely can't touch it. I need you to do it for me. And the parent gets stuck with a choice of either they do what the child says or they deal with the anxiety and everything. But you have to be strong. Both of you have to be strong with this. Because unfortunately, if I'm not going to give a lot of backstory about OCD, because we talk about this every time. And you can listen to my other shows with specifics of how OCD develops. Actually, probably if this is the first time you're listening to me, go back a few shows. There was an interview that I did with another channel. Listen to that, because in that one I give you a full overview of how OCD develops. So that will really help you. It's in my videos, just like few up below this one, earlier than this one. So, but basically, every time you do reassurance in any way, OCD gets worse. So you can do reassurance through avoidance, through like physically asking for reassurance, or through mental reassurance, meaning going mentally back to the situation and trying to solve it. Like, did I really do that? Did this really happen? What was said? Who said what? Who did what? All of this stuff. So, but because in all of those situations, whether you're avoiding, whether you're asking for reassurance, whether you're thinking about reassurance, you are trying to solve it and you are sending a signal to your mind that you are afraid. The mind catches that signal that you are afraid and sends you more thoughts in the future. So you have to, I know, like, guys, I had OCD and I overcame OCD. So I know what I'm talking about when I say it's extremely difficult to refuse seeking reassurance, because you have to fight against anxiety, you have to fight against feeling all of these emotions of fear, shame, anger, all of these things. But all of those emotions are created because your brain thinks that the situation is real when it's not. Because in the past you were doing reassurance. So because you were doing that reassurance in the past, your brain learned that it's real. It's not really, but your brain learned that it's real based on your reaction. And now your brain is saying, well, I've learned it in the past, so here's some more anxiety now. But by refusing the anxiety, now you control the future, where in the future your brain's going to say, in the past he or she has not reacted, the past being now. So now in the future, I'm not going to send her anxiety or him anxiety because there's no need for it. The person's not reacting with fear. There's no danger here. Because the brain does it only because it's trying to protect you from danger. That part of the brain, I guess I am going into the whole story of it, but the part of the brain that's controlling this OCD stuff is called the amygdala. I mean, it's not only part of the brain that's controlling it, but a big part of it. It has no way of telling the difference between real thoughts and not real thoughts, like important thoughts versus not. It's like a traffic control person in the middle of an intersection. It's directing thoughts. So thoughts are coming in, and that part of the brain is directing important thoughts and not important thoughts. Okay? So and the way it does it, the only way it can do it is by your reaction. So it's looking to you to see, are you anxious? No? Okay, thought gets lost in time. You are anxious. Okay, the thought must be important. I better bring this thought up again. This is the nucleus of OCD situation. This is why people get stuck, because they keep making the thought important by paying attention to it, and the brain keeps it there. So it becomes a cycle. But you have to understand that you are always powering it up. As soon as you stop powering it up, it's going to go away. And you can see that sometimes when people have OCD themes switch is because the reason why it switches for them instead of going away is because they're doing it subconsciously. They're not realizing that they're doing recovery work. They just, for example, a person was in their teenage years worried about if they're homosexual or not. But as they grow up, they obviously know where they are, whether they are or they're not, and it stops being an issue for them. And when it stops being an issue, meaning that they stop paying attention to it, the thought goes away. It's not important anymore. The brain drops it. But because they haven't done it consciously in the way of saying that this is not real and doing the recovery work, it just switches to a different thought that's more relevant in their adult years. Another OCD thought. So, but you can see how that mechanism works. And it works not just with OCD thoughts, but with regular thoughts as well. That when we have some sort of a stressful situations in our lives, and we focus on specific situations so much, but the situation goes away, and then you almost forget you've ever experienced it. Because, again, you're dropping the attention, and the brain drops bringing it up again. So everything boils down to your attention. What is your attention on? And you can use this not just with OCD, you can use this in your regular life as well. What is your attention on right now? Is it something positive that you want to keep your attention on consciously, or is it something negative? This can help you in all areas, such as, relationships. If you are going over something somebody did to you, or something negative, you know what I mean? And can't let go of it. So this is the thing, is focus your attention elsewhere, and you will see that you no longer feel that strong emotion about it anymore. It's like, when you have a fight with somebody, and right after the fight you feel so angry at them, or whatever the situation may be, but as time goes by you're like, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. Because you're not looking at it from the emotional perspective anymore. You drop the attention, and your mind drops the situation. So, and going back to what I was talking about with people around you, the people around you have a great position. If they want to help you, they have a great position of being like an observer. So they don't have the emotional attachment that you have to this specific situation. They understand it logically, how everybody should understand, right? So what they can do to help you is to help you see that logic. But it works both ways, because they can tell you all day long, but if you're not listening to them, it's not going to work. So it's a two-way street, where they have to do their part, you have to do your part. Of course, as the person who is actually suffering from OCD, most of the responsibility lies on you, because if you just keep asking and asking and asking them for reassurance, first of all, it's going to hurt the relationship. Trust me when I say, from my own personal experiences, as well as experiences of a lot of my clients, it hurts relationships to ask about OCD stuff. At first it's fine, but after a while, for the other person, it gets really old, you know. So I wouldn't ask just for that reason alone, but um, when you are in a situation and you feel like you want to ask, try to refuse as much as possible. Refocus. Say, okay, I'm sitting here on the couch. I know I can just ask the other person, but I'm gonna go and do something else. I'm gonna go for a drive, or I'm gonna go do something. This might not work if you have driving OCD, but I'm going to do something else that's going to take my mind off of it. And actually, if you do have driving OCD, what happens if you do this is called a flooding technique. So, or any kind of OCD. The flooding technique means that you are taking whatever you were worried about. For example, with driving, you're worried that you hit somebody. You had another person in the car. You want to ask that person if anything happened. Okay? So instead of asking them, go for another drive and another drive and another drive. And after doing all those drives, you'll probably feel a little bit better because there's going to be other things that are happening. And you can start to see through it that, okay, if I think I hit like 20 people today, then that's probably not true, Nothing, because nobody has come to move. The police are not at my door, therefore it's most likely not true. So, and then you can tell that the situation didn't happen, And in a way, that is kind of reassurance as well. But the way you can tell good reassurance from bad reassurance is, are you coming from a position of power? When you're doing this, like the flooding technique, you are saying, I don't care what you're telling me, OCD. I'm going to go do driving anyway because I'm not doing anything wrong. Do you know what I mean? And when you do that, your mind will say, okay, the person is taking a position of power. That means there's probably no danger. I better drop this thought. Rather than being in a submissive mode and being very scared and saying, can you tell me, I need to seek reassurance, all this stuff, That's coming from a position of fear. So there's different things about it. But if you are the person who is looking for information on how to help the person who is suffering from OCD, this is the way to do it. Also, if you feel like the person who has OCD is getting quiet, if they're getting in a situation where they want to be by themselves, you have to talk to them and say, listen, they can listen to my shows and so they understand the theory behind it, but you have to sit them down and say, why are you isolating yourself? Are you isolating yourself so you can think further about the situation? Because you shouldn't be doing that, because that's going to make you feel worse in the future. So bringing them back, because you can tell by how the person is acting whether they're okay, especially with people with OCD. It's very visually very obvious if they're okay or if they're getting quiet, if you feel like they're not focusing on what you're saying anymore. They're kind of they're physically present, but they're mentally away. They're not paying attention because they're stuck in their thoughts. You can be the person who brings them back and says, okay, you know what? You can't continue like this. Let's go out. Let's do something. But have them do something that's like interactive. Like probably like things like going to a movie is not a great idea because throughout the movie they can just sit there and think about the situation. But something like going out for dinner with their friends or with the families, because that's gonna everybody's gonna be talking and they're gonna have a very difficult time thinking. And that's what you need to stop them from doing, is from overthinking the situation. Because the attention has to be focused elsewhere, not on this situation. So that's, as somebody who is trying to help, that's what you can do. Also, I have a lot of information available. I have a lot of books available. I always say that if you can afford it, great. If you can't afford it, message me and say, Ali, I can't afford it. Can you just send me this book because it's really important to me? And guys, please don't take advantage of this because, I'm pretty much doing this full time now. So, I can't, do this much volume of work and receive no money. Because people sometimes say, well, you're getting money from it. Well, first of all, I'm not getting as much money as, people think, and second of all, I have a family to take care of, and it's, I'm just saying, like, if you need it, it's there. If you can't afford it, so but either way, 'cause this information is very, very important. And I think that in today's world, the the one thing where the doctors are making a huge mistake is that they're not giving the person enough information about OCD. That they're not, basically, as a person who has OCD, or as a person who's trying to help somebody who has OCD, you want to become an expert in the disorder. And when you go see a doctor, I don't know about where you are in your country, but in Canada here, or in the United States, it's a very quick visit. So it's basically, you go in, see the doctor 5-6 minutes, and that's it. They're not able to tell you the backstory about OCD. They're just able to prescribe you something, say, how are you, that's it. You need much more support than that. So, I mean, like, and again, if, just like I said about the books, I do have a recovery program, and depending on your situation, we can work something out. Especially in the beginning, you need continuous support to get over this, because when you start to refuse reassurance, there are so many little things that will come up that will try to confuse you, and you need to understand how to react. So you're becoming an expert in these things, and that's what I say to all my clients, that once you get over this, you can do exactly the same thing that I'm doing, because there's so many people in the world, and really there's only a few specialists who know how to fix it. Most doctors just know what to prescribe for it. They don't know how to fix it without medication. So, and the problem is with it, this kind of medication, it doesn't get rid of the root of the problem, it just numbs it. So as soon as you stop taking medication, you will be right back to where you were in the beginning. It doesn't actually cure the situation, it masks the problem. Because if it cured the situation, then great, you can take medication, you feel better, but this is not it, it's just, it's a temporary solution. It's not even really a solution, it's like a temporary fix. So becoming an expert is essential. You can read as many books as possible on OCD. You should read as many books as possible on OCD. I would suggest reading from different authors and different approaches, so the whole scope of it. Go on the forums. But again, when you go on the forums, on OCD forums online, there's a really strong undertone of seeking reassurance on most forums. So people with OCD are seeking reassurance from each other. So don't fall into that, but just generally look at what some of the forum members that are not giving reassurance are suggesting. So what are the people's obsessions? Again, this is kind of like if you can handle it, because I don't want you to go on one of those forums, read something else, and get triggered, right? But at the same time, every time you get triggered with your OCD, it's an exposure. And I don't know if you know a lot about exposure and response prevention, but with exposure, every time you expose yourself, your brain is looking for you to see what you're going to do. This is the perfect time to reprogram that brain. And it's going to take more than one time, more than 10 times, because you've told it the wrong thing more than 10 times. So it's not going to just magically say, black is black, when a million times before this you told me that black is white. So there's going to be a process of trying to do the same, like it's a repetitive process of doing the same thing over and over again, but the right way. So your brain will throw a thought at you, you refuse to pay attention. Again, it will throw a thought at you. Again, you refuse to pay attention. So it's not going to be a one-time thing. It's going to be continuous. And if you're getting like what is called pummeling, where all day long you're just getting thought after thought after thought, it's like you are in a football game, right? You're a goalie, or soccer, right, as we say here. You're a goalie, and you are just, the balls are just coming at you, and you're just knocking them out, one after another, after another, after another. Because every time you say, no, I'm not going to pay attention to this, you are saying to your mind that this thought is irrelevant. And you need to say it enough times for it to go away, for your mind to get it and for it to go away. And how many is that? We don't know. What's that number? But the more you can practice, the faster you will recover, you know? And this goes into another topic of exposures, forced exposures, or I guess forced is not really the right word, planned exposures, let's say, and accidental exposures. Accidental exposures is, for example, if you are at work and you're getting whatever your OCD theme is, you get a lot of that at work, right? That's accidental exposure. Because I mean, you just, as you're going through life, as you're going through work, you get these thoughts. Planned exposure is, okay, I have driving OCD. I don't really have to drive anywhere right now, but I'm going to drive on purpose to get the anxiety up a little bit. And when the anxiety goes up a little, I'm not going to react. So it's very, very important to do it that way, because see, okay, when you do only accidental exposure, so whenever you're forced to deal with OCD, you deal with it, but you don't actually bring it on more. When you do that, your recovery becomes a lot slower. But it's easier to manage. So there's also an art to it in terms of how much you can handle, depending on what the rest of your life looks like. If you are in a situation in your life where you need to be very productive, you might not be able to do that many exposures, because exposures are going to cause anxiety. Anxiety is going to be high, and all of this is going to take your focus away from your real life stuff. So if you do have the room in your life right now to do exposures, I suggest you do them, you know, like planned exposures, right? Your anxiety will go up, watch it go up, do nothing, then it's going to come down. It's not going to stay up forever. So it's going to come down. The best thing you can do as your anxiety go up is refocus on something else. So you went for a drive. Again, you're thinking you drove over somebody. Okay, well, then you're going to go to do some shopping afterwards. You're going to go do this. Then you're going to go out with your friends. So you're creating a situation where throughout the day, you're not going to have a lot of time to think. And that's going to really help you reduce the level of anxiety. And not that... See, anxiety is based on the past, you know, so it really has no validity other than it really, you know, hurts, right? But it's not a valid situation where it hurts for a reason. It hurts just because your brain has learned the wrong things. That's the only reason why that anxiety is there, you know? So it depends, you know, but if you do planned exposures and do a lot of them, you will recover a lot faster. Now, if somebody says, and actually a lot of people ask me this question, is, well, my thoughts are there with me all the time. So you know, like, what do you mean not react? It's there 24/7. And every time so for example, you wake up in the morning, your OCD is extremely strong. You refuse to pay attention. Then as throughout the day, somebody called, somebody did something, you got busy. It went down a little bit. Then all of a sudden it hits you again. So every time, it's there all the time, but every time it really tries to get to you, that's an exposure. So basically, the exposure is only what your reaction is. So, well, the response is what your reaction is. So, but that's the only part that counts, is what I meant to say. So the situation, when you get a thought, that's an exposure, right? You can't help that. Your brain is sending it on autopilot. But the response, your reaction, this is what really counts. Do you know what I mean? So as soon as you stop yourself from reacting, you will feel that, okay, at first the anxiety went up, but you're doing it from such a strong position of power, like saying, I'm choosing not to react. And again, that word choose, that I choose not to react. I choose not to pay attention. I don't need proof that the situation didn't happen or is not going to happen or whatever. I'm just choosing not to. When I find out, then I'll know, then maybe I'll choose different. But for now, I'm choosing not to react. And I'm choosing it because every time I chose to react, nothing happened. Other than I reacted, right? So that's why, and being very strong in that stance. So, and you will see that it starts to get better. This is, see, with OCD, you can't fake your recovery in terms of how, not like your day-to-day recovery, I mean, the recovery process, I guess is correct to say. Because if you did the wrong thing yesterday, like you paid attention, you reacted, chances are you're going to get more OCD today. If you did good and refused the reaction, so you got the thought but refused the reaction, the next day you will feel better. Because the brain is always learning how to react to these thoughts. And like I said, the only way it can know is by seeing what you're doing. So, and then again, going back to what other people around you can do, is other people around you can tell you all this stuff, what I'm saying. And I guess it's important that I mentioned all of these things in today's show, because if you are trying to help somebody, you have to explain everything I explained, or just give them the recording of the show. And really, I do suggest listening to that other show as well that I mentioned. Maybe I'll link it to this video. So you guys can have a full overview of OCD. There's also very specific things about different types of themes. I do have books on some of the themes. I'm working on putting out more books as my time allows, because I do think it's important to know the specifics for each theme, because yes, OCD theory is the same, and I put that theory in pretty much all my books, but then there's theme specific questions, and it's, unless you're talking to me directly, there's really, like, how will you know if you've never dealt with it before, or you read a lot of information about that specific theme, right? Not like in the reassurance kind of way, but how it relates to OCD specifically, right? So I think it's important to talk about all those different things, because they do come up as you're doing it, and then you're like, well, am I doing the wrong thing? Am I seeking reassurance? Am I doing avoidance? Or am I not? So it's really kind of hard to judge. But they basically, what I'm saying is, you need to become an expert. However you become an expert, you need to become an expert in your disorder, or in your loved one's disorder. So more than just taking a pill, or more just trusting the doctors, because honestly, and I'm not, trying to make anything up, this is the truth, that almost every single time that a person comes to me, they say that I went to the doctor and the therapy is not working. They're giving me prescription, they're talking to me, but it's not really helping. It's the wrong kind of way of talking, because they're doing more like talk therapy. So, it's, you can't rely on other, and it's very sad fact, I find, because as somebody who had OCD myself, I mean, I didn't know all this information, and I just realized that, when I first went, I was very young and very naive, and I thought the doctor, would know about this, right? But they know a little bit, of course, but they don't know enough to actually help somebody fully recover, and depending on where you are in the world, there are a lot of, I'm not saying there's no doctors, there are a lot of very good professionals, but most of them have been writing books on OCD. So if you really want somebody who knows what they're talking about, basically just go to your local chapters, or your local bookstore, and see what books and who wrote those books, and contact those people, because those people really know what they're talking about. They specialize in this stuff. Your local doctor, they just know probably little bit of about OCD. So it's very important for you to become an expert yourself, so you're not relying on anybody else. And then you can choose whether to take medication or not, and that choice is different for everybody. But you have to help yourself with this, because there's just not enough help out there, and unfortunately that is the sad truth. And again, people get very kind of worked up about wanting to be diagnosed professionally, and if a person has went to medical school and studied OCD for, say, a week, amongst other many, many, many issues that can happen to a human being, that week of study, does that make them an expert in OCD? So when you are getting diagnosed from your doctor, do you think you, the person who's suffering from OCD, who's been through it, who understands it, or me, the person who's been helping people forever but is not a doctor, right? Do we know more about it, or does a doctor with a degree but who's only had a week of study about OCD, and week is at best. Most of the time it's not a week, but okay, let's say a week. How much do they really know? Or do they only know that people do repetitive actions and there is medication that can help from it? You know, so I'm saying it's good to get diagnosed, of course. I'm not saying it's not. But don't get distressed about it, because it's just a person's opinion. Doctors are not magicians. They're not special people. They're not better than you or me, you know? They just went to school for it, but again, it was very, very brief, because it can be specified, because for it to be specialized and specified, they have to be only studying OCD. You know, they're studying, they're general doctors, they're studying things in general. Even as a psychiatrist, you know, psychiatrists obviously know way more about OCD. But again, there's so many things. You know, if you are going to see a psychiatrist, I think it's very important for you to actually ask them. Don't be scared because they're a doctor. You know, they're another person. Ask them, how many people have you helped with OCD? Have you helped anybody recover? That should be a key question. Look them in the eye and ask, have you helped anybody fully recover from OCD? If they say no, well, then what are you paying for? What are you going there for? They can't help you, you know? But the good thing about it is you don't need, honestly, as a person who wants to recover from OCD, you don't need anybody. You can do it all yourself. I've done it myself. I didn't have really doctors that were helpful. I didn't have all agreement. I didn't have any knowledge. I just went and did some research and just figured it out. And the way I did it is basically by doing everything wrong, doing reassurance, learning that, okay, well, I've been doing reassurance for months now and I'm feeling increasingly worse. That means reassurance is not a good idea. You know, so things like that, you know, and I don't want you to do that, what I did, though. I want you to just trust me and not go put yourself through it, because then you have to dig yourself out. But it's the truth of the matter. You just need to focus on it, make it a priority, and just, you know, power through these thoughts. Because just like you taught your brain a certain amount of times that the situation is important, now you have to undo that certain amount of times. You don't have to actually get to that specific number, but you have to say it enough for your brain to get it. That's all you have to do. You just have to repeat that action a certain number of times. And you will feel better. You know? And like I said, like my clients, they recover within, you know, usually within a few months. They get to a point that they're fine. They're maybe not perfect, but they don't really need me. They're like, yeah, I'm on my way. I'm very close to recovery, you know, and within, say, 6 months, they're recovered. So some people take longer. It really depends on each individual person and how sick of the disorder they are, how much they're willing to fight for it. You know, everybody's there's no, it's not a race. You're racing against yourself. Right? It's not a situation where, well, this person is recovering faster, why am I not recovering? You're not recovering because you're seeking a lot of reassurance. Reduce your reassurance seeking on a daily basis, you will start to recover faster. Increase it, you will start to recover slower, or you'll stop your recovery entirely. Right? So you are at the wheel. You control your recovery. You don't need anybody else. You just need to focus and keep going until you recover. And another thing is that sometimes when you're close to full recovery, OCD will have a tendency to switch to another topic. So it'll say, okay, well, you are feeling better about this, but what about that? You know? And it will try to switch. So it's very important that it doesn't matter what exactly the theme of the thought is, the topic of the thought, react to it the same way, with indifference. I don't care. This is a repetitive thought. This is silly. This is OCD. I'm not paying attention. So, and as somebody who is trying to help somebody else recover, you can say that for them, to them. Say, you shouldn't care. This is silly. You have to stop powering the thoughts up. So I hope today's show has been helpful to you guys. If you have any questions, you can always reach me at info@youhaveocd.com. That email is private. I'm the only one who sees it, so please feel free. If you have a question you would like me to reply on the show, please email me, but let me know that that's a question you are willing to share. And I'm not going to mention your real name or even the full scope of your question, just enough so you know that you know what I'm replying to, as well as that others can learn a little bit about. So don't worry, everything stays private. If you're interested in some of the information I have or the recovery program or the ebooks, you can find all of that at youhaveocd.com. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe, and I will see you next time.